Hello friends, welcome back to the bench. Our patient is a B460 Tomahawk. This is the one that we couldn't figure out why there was no V-core on it, and there was no V-core because we had a short on the CPU, the crushed capacitors. However, replacement of the capacitors didn't help. I mean, it didn't relieve the short on the core, so the CPU is busted. But we still have to replace the socket on this one. And yesterday I received a new thermocouple. Let me show you. So this is our new thermocouple now, and the board is up to like 51 degrees, 50 now. Now it's dropping because I touch it. The difference between this one and the previous one is the thermal mass. This one has very minimum thermal mass, so it heats up very quickly. That means that I no longer have to set the board to the 100 degrees and then 200, 260, like gradually, in the fear that it will overshoot way too much, because this one reacts a lot better. I also fixed it in position using the bolt over here. It seems to be working just fine. And now let's prep the board for socket replacement. I don't have the replacement socket in stock yet. I'm still waiting for them. So we're just going to remove the socket. But that's going to give us a better vision of how this new thermocouple behaves. But so far it looks like it's going to behave awesome. Alrighty, and we're done. And now this was a lot more painful than I expected, but actually I should have expected it, because if you do modifications to your tools, they're gonna work differently. So the temperature before I was setting on the heater was 260, because 270 was a bit too high. With new thermocouple, it gets the temperature of the heater a lot better, so 260 was too low. That's why it took over half an hour, because I couldn't get the board to 220. It needs to go to, actually I only got it to about 215, 216, as you saw on the footage, but that was enough to dislodge the socket. Now there are no signs of melting, however there was some smoke. I did see some smoke, but I don't see any signs of melting anywhere. This damage over here that you see is from the tweezers, because I kept banging on it to see if it's if it's gonna dislodge. So this is the damage I did physically, but no melting at the bottom, and on the top maybe a little bit of melting here. Yeah, I think we did a little bit of melting here. That's where the smoke was coming from. Yeah, because that's where the heater is hitting, roughly in this area. But the reason it started melting is because we did a slight too much time. We spent a bit too much time heating it from the top, because the temperature wouldn't go up, and the temperature wouldn't go up because our bottom temperature was too low. So now the bottom temperature I set to 285, and I will likely even, well, I wanted to get to hit the lowest temperature possible. But if you work with lowest temperature possible, it's a little risky, because the solder is on the verge of melting, or on the very threshold of melting. So it's very easy to just pull too quickly, too early, and rip some parts. So I will probably try with 290 in the next on the next job, and I'm expecting a lot more of these. As you can see, no rip pads, no warping of the board. So even though we melted the socket slightly, now this all this you can see over here, that's not melted plastic. We didn't melt quite that much of the socket. It just started smoking slightly. It wasn't a lot of smoke. It started smoking a little bit, but all this, that's the flux. This is all flux that I used for removing the solder. It's still not completely clean. I can definitely see and feel that there's plenty of solder here. You can probably see it as well. There's plenty of solder, so this needs to be cleaned more. But some parts are ready, like this side. This side is fine. Here and here, yeah. The majority is desoldered, so I only missed the spot over here. So it's not quite ready for the replacement just yet, but I'll just clean it right before I will be doing the replacement on this one. So the main benefit from the new thermocouple is that our temperature reading is a lot more reactive, a lot quicker. We don't have to heat up that big thermocouple we had before. It's only a little piece of metal that needs to heat up. Also, it is placed flat on the heater, so it gets the temperature of the heater relatively correctly. That's why 260 was too low, because 260 was exactly 260 on the heater, and that was the maximum temperature the heater was heating up to before the modification. And that's why we modified it, so we can increase the temperature. And 260 on the heater, not enough. 285 seems to do the trick, but it's at the very low end. I think 290 would even work better. But the main measure of success of this job is no warping anywhere on the board, which we can see that there is none. And usually when there's warping, it actually happens around here. This is where the heater hits the most. So this is roughly the area that experiences warping. But it can also warp on the outside over here. If it's on the outside, I had one board that just kind of slightly warped, just kind of bulged up over here. It was away from the socket, right? So that still might be okay, but you never know if there's no damage to the board. So it's kind of risky. If you have bulging on those lines, like here, I wouldn't touch that anymore. I wouldn't trust the board anymore, because it might work when you go into BIOS. You just kind of test it and it seems to work, but it's gonna have subtle issues. So if there's any kind of warping, the board is done. It's parts. Try again on another board. And of course, ripped pads, right? We don't want to see the ripped pads or missing capacitors. However, if you miss capacitors, even if you knock all of these out, it's just added work that you need to replace them. So it's not a huge deal in my view. If you knock off the capacitors, it's just added work, nothing more. You haven't broken anything. But any pad that is ripped, you're done. Well, kind of, if it's NC, then fine. But on most boards, there are no NC pins under the CPU. Maybe not on most boards, but on, I don't know. Some are redundant, like V-Core and VCCIO, GT, ground, of course. So you can get away with one pad missing, but I would not recommend it. I would not, especially if you're planning to sell the board. If any of the pads is missing, then that's a no-go. Don't sell that to anyone. Either keep it for yourself or just keep it for parts. And that's it. But looks like we have a good results, and actually let's see the other side of the CPU. It melted nicely. I mean, the solder melted nicely. Yeah. So the only thing is that slight melting over here. Yeah. That's where the smoke was coming from this thing, here and here. But if the temperature, the bottom heater is not hot enough, the board is not hot enough, it's not gonna let loose. This is lead-free solder. Very difficult compound to work with. Now we just need to wait for the 1200 socket, and of course clean the pads a little more once we get the socket, and we are done. Looks like new thermocouple is working perfectly fine, so I'm happy with it. Also, it's mounted a little better, and it reacts a lot better. We'll see how long it's gonna work. At least now I know if for some reason this thermocouple breaks, then I know if I go back to the other one, I need to reduce the temperature to 260. On this one, 285, maybe 290. I will do some more experiments once I have some more boards to play with. But this looks pretty good. I like it. I like the result of this. Alrighty, thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate you, and I shall see you in the next one.